Thank you. The next item of business and the final item of business is a members' business debate on motion 18408 in the name of Miles Briggs on CHAS, Keeping the Joy Alive. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put. Can I ask those members who wish to speak in the debate, please press your request to speak buttons now. And I call on Miles Briggs to open the debate. Mr Briggs, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'd like to thank colleagues from across the Chamber who've supported my motion this evening, allowing for the debate to take place, and warmly welcome to Parliament those staff, supporters and volunteers from CHAS who have joined us in the public gallery this evening, ahead of also CHAS's annual reception, which will be in the garden lobby after this debate. And I want to begin by paying tribute to each and every one of CHAS's staff, volunteers for the massive contribution they make in helping to provide world-class levels of care and support to babies, children and young people with life-shortening conditions across our country. We owe them a huge debt. We owe them a huge debt of gratitude for what they do for our constituents and for families we represent here in the Parliament. CHAS works right across the whole of Scotland. It's 2 hospices at Robin House in Balloch and also Rachel House in Kinross are centres of excellence in care, providing both respite and end-of-life care and support. I was delighted to visit Robin House last month with my colleague Maurice Corrie, having previously visited Rachel House on a number of occasions before. And it was a great honour to meet the staff there and again see the huge difference they are making to families. And writing this speech tonight, I was thinking about a word to describe both Robin House and Rachel House, and I don't really think I can come up with one, perhaps haven or oasis, but they simply just don't do it justice. They are special and magical places, and Scotland should be immensely proud that we as a nation have organisations, and have an organisation like CHAS providing such support in such beautiful state-of-the-art facilities. Last year alone, Robin House and Rachel House were able to provide more than 12,200 overnight stays for children and families. And the CHAS at Home team provided care and support in homes across all regions of Scotland, including our remote rural and island communities, with bases in Inverness, Aberdeen, Balloch and Kinross. CHAS also has specialist teams within hospitals across Scotland, with dedicated consultants, nurses and CHAS Diana children's nurses delivering care in Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen and Inverness. Here in my own region of Lothian, CHAS makes a huge contribution to local families, supporting neonatal memory making at the Simpson Centre and also part funding a consultant neonatologist there as well. CHAS has formed a major new partnership with the Royal Hospital for Children in Glasgow, with a new paediatric supportive and palliative care team there, entirely funded now by CHAS as well. 2 specialist nurses are working alongside a consultant in paediatric palliative medicine to share specialist knowledge and improve care for children who are likely to sadly die young, and to therefore ensure that the intensive support their families need is provided. The aim is to ensure that children with palliative care needs and their families experience consistently high quality care and support. Deputy Presiding Officer, as my motion states this evening, the number of babies, children and young people in Scotland aged between 0 and 21 who have life-shortening conditions is currently almost 16,000, and this number is increasing. CHAS is already supporting over 465 of these babies and children, a 25% increase over the past 5 years. And for every child they see, they also on average are supporting 5 family members as well. Last year, 1,205 visits were made by CHAS's at-home service, again a 30% increase over the past 5 years. And CHAS provided support to 84 families whose babies, children or young people had sadly died last year. CHAS's 864 volunteers donated an incredible 59,310 hours to children and families they were supporting. And the fantastic team of supporters and voluntary fundraisers have now raised a remarkable £8.7 million as well last year. And I want to take this opportunity to briefly highlight the outstanding fundraising work of those behind Edinburgh's capital Sci-Fi Con, whose volunteer cosplayers, led by Keith Armour, donated all the profits from their events to CHAS. They have collectively raised over £250,000 for CHAS since 2015, which, as I think all members would agree, is a fantastic achievement. And for every £1 of statutory funding given to help support the services CHAS provide, the estimated economic return on this investment is £5.12, an indication of just how much value CHAS provide. If there is one thing I know members across the chamber will agree, it is that CHAS doesn't ever rest on its laurels, but is continuously developing new ideas and initiatives to help young people and their families across Scotland. Their new home volunteer service sees volunteers visit ill children at home, and in the first year of this service alone, volunteers made 115 home visits. And I was really impressed to hear the plans they have to expand this service. CHAS is also focusing on providing support to the siblings of children with life-limiting conditions, and their support has been invaluable to dozens of brothers and sisters of seriously ill children across our country. I want to close this evening's debate by again thanking all of those who work for and volunteer for CHAS for everything that they do to support families across our country. Their contribution to individuals in need and their wider palliative care sector in our country can never be overestimated. They really do help keep the joy alive for a huge number of people and families who are going through the most difficult of times. So on behalf of the whole Scottish Parliament, thank you and look forward to the rest of this debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Briggs. I now call on Monica Lennon to be followed by Annabel Ewing. Ms Lennon, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I commend Miles Briggs in bringing this motion to the Chamber for debate, and I'm delighted to be able to make a small contribution and also express my admiration and gratitude to everyone at CHAS for all that they do to keep the joy alive for children and young people with life-threatening conditions, and of course for their families. CHAS work with people right across Scotland, which is absolutely fantastic, and they work closely with NHS colleagues and in our communities. And I had the great privilege of visiting Robin House over the summer to find out more about the work that the staff and the volunteers do and what the experience it is for children and young people. And in my area, which is Lanarkshire, CHAS has directly supported 33 children and young people and their families just in the past year alone. So the impact is significant, and it's not just what is provided at Robin House and Rachel House, it's also CHAS at Home service, which a lot of people don't know about, and respite and end-of-life care in the hospices, which is also important. I know other colleagues will probably talk about their time visiting Robin House and Rachel House, but when I was there, I was just so bowled over by just how homely it is and so colourful and so welcoming, and I enjoyed a lovely meal with some staff and volunteers. But from the large hydrotherapy pool to the beautiful gardens which are accessible for everyone, and just the opportunity to have fun and to play and to relax and to have quiet time if you need it. I was especially moved by the areas for reflection and the support in terms of bereavement and the care that is given. It's just a place that is filled with love. The Rainbow Room, so when people wonder about where their donations go, the Rainbow Room is probably a really good example to give, where families can use the facilities in the hospice from the day that a child dies until the day of the funeral. But CHAS need over £2 million a year to keep Robin House operational, and that's over and above the statutory funding that comes from the Scottish Government. So it takes a lot of time and effort and money to provide these services. And CHAS can't do that without their volunteers. They have over 100 active volunteers who do amazing and fantastic work. So today is an opportunity for all of us in the chamber to say a big thank you to them. And I know there's going to be the reception tonight in the garden lobby, which I'm sure will be well attended. When I go home at night, I'm greeted by a beautiful, colourful plant pot which has my name on it, which was a gift from the team at CHAS, and it's lovely to see. I'm doing my best to look after it, Presiding Officer. I don't have a great track record with plants, but it is lovely when I come home from often quite a busy, long, stressful day to see that, and it just reminds me of the joy and the magic at CHAS. So I want to say a big thank you. I know that CHAS have lots of supporters right across the chamber, but there's always more that we can do. I remember when I put down a motion during Children's Hospice Week that I read that quite a lot of people in Scotland don't really know what children's hospices do. So I think there's a lot more that we can do to raise that awareness and to make sure that the excellent data that we have in Scotland, probably the best in the world, I'm getting some nods from the public gallery, that we use that to maximum effect to make sure that across the NHS and in the community that we know exactly what children and young people with life-shortening illnesses need, and we continue to be a champion for CHAS in Parliament.
Thank you very much. And can I say to the gallery, I know why you're clapping, but we don't permit clapping in the public gallery. So if you would just desist, that would be absolutely dandy. I now call Annabel Ewing to be followed by Mary Fee. Ms Ewing.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm also very pleased to have been called to speak in this debate, and I would wish to congratulate Miles Briggs on securing the debate this evening. And at the outset, I too would wish to pay tribute to the CHAS staff and volunteers who do a remarkable job and deserve indeed our heartfelt thanks. And it is worth noting again the quite remarkable fact that there are currently some 864 volunteers who have donated around 59,310 hours to the children and families supported by CHAS across Scotland. That really is a truly remarkable statistic, Presiding Officer. And I would also like to pay tribute to all those who fundraise for CHAS, the length and breadth of the country and at all times of the year. And for example, just recently in my own constituency of Cowdenbeath, there was a show in Crossgate where we saw the Cowdenbeath band, the Sunset Spirit, playing and donating their time to CHAS. So well done to them. And indeed, it is perhaps difficult to think of a charitable organisation which inspires such determined and loyal fundraising and which is so universally supported by the generosity of the public. CHAS indeed has developed over and evolved over the years with the hospices in Kinross and in Ballach, and at the same time we have seen CHAS develop their outreach service, CHAS at Home, which in the past year of operation saw volunteers make, as has been mentioned, some 1,205 home visits. Also mentioned tonight is the fact that CHAS have established a presence in hospitals, and their staff now work within hospital neonatal units in Edinburgh and in Glasgow. CHAS have also developed a new children's consultant post in NHS Grampian, and they have expanded their network of CHAS Diana children's nurses with new posts based in Aberdeen and in Inverness. I too welcome the groundbreaking partnership of paediatric, supportive and palliative care, which has seen a team established at the Royal Hospital for Children in Glasgow providing direct care and building links with other CHAS services. Presiding Officer, these developments very much fit with CHAS's overarching ambition set out in its current 3-year strategic plan, which is to reach every family in Scotland that needs them. This is rightly an ambitious target, but it is one that I wholeheartedly support. For in testament after testament, it is beyond doubt that the services that CHAS provides to families are pivotal to their being able to cope and to having the opportunity to capture the irreplaceable moments with their child. Respite care is vital for families, and the focus also on siblings and on the stresses and pain that they are going through is a key part of the service that CHAS provides. And indeed, this recognition of the difficulties faced by siblings is very important, as they may struggle within the family as well as at school, and they may feel quite alone. So having someone that they can talk through things with and the opportunity to meet up with other young people in the same position is extremely important. And I'm pleased to note in that regard, Presiding Officer, that CHAS has put out a recent call to arms to high schools, including in my constituency of Cowdenbeath, to ask young pupils in senior years to consider also becoming volunteers. I think that is a commendable initiative, and I'm happy to help raise awareness of that this evening. And indeed, as a member representing a Fife constituency, it is good to see that in Fife, a Care24 team has been established in partnership with NHS Fife to support families with overnight care at the end of life of a child. Also, the CHAS at Home service is operational in Fife, and a medical partnership is in operation with NHS Fife. Presiding Officer, there are many other initiatives underway, but time constraints obviously tonight do not permit a detailed examination of these. Suffice to say that CHAS continues to evolve and to innovate for the benefit of thousands of children and families across Scotland. This organisation has only been going for about 25 years in its current form, but its stature is such that it is difficult, if not impossible, to imagine life in Scotland without it. The title of tonight's debate is Keeping the Joy Alive. The hard work of CHAS staff and their volunteers ensures exactly that, and in the most unbearable of circumstances. We are all in their debt, Presiding Officer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I call Mary Fee to be followed by Brian Whittle. Ms Fee.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer, and I too thank Miles Briggs for securing this debate tonight. In April 2018, I was fortunate enough to receive an invitation to visit Robin House in Ballach. And I was aware of the work of CHAS and probably, like most people, apprehensive of going to a children's hospice. The word hospice can evoke sad and negative thoughts. And Deputy Presiding Officer, I couldn't have been more wrong. The first impression that strikes you when you arrive at Robin House is the setting. Calm, quiet and surrounded by peaceful countryside. And inside the house, as it's known, is a warm, loving, colourful and positive environment. Families support their loved ones 24/7. And to have that respite support, either planned or emergency, is essential for families with a life-limiting child to function. The hospice provides space for a family to be just that, a family. CHAS offers a sense of normality. And such care and detail goes into the preparation for the family's stay. From having the child's favourite character duvet cover to the toy they have favoured in previous visits. With family photographs adorning the bedroom walls, there is a real sense of home. Parents, carers and siblings are not forgotten either. There are quiet family rooms of hotel standard looking out into the countryside. Every detail thought through with the knowledge that there are medical professionals with them so they can have a proper night's sleep, they can relax, rest and mentally switch off. Making memories is high priority for the families of life-limiting children and essential for their healing when that inevitable time comes. Specially adapted therapy rooms are included in Robin House, the state-of-the-art music room, the biggest hydrotherapy pool I have ever seen, the messy playroom and the all-important sensory room. These are experiences that cannot be offered at home, and such state-of-the-art facilities leads to significant costs. And CHAS does rely heavily on public support to maintain that work. Essential funds must be raised on a continual basis to allow both houses to function. I also learned the importance of volunteering to both CHAS houses, from the volunteer gardeners to the chefs, the play therapists, to the holistic counsellors, all willingly giving their personal time to make each family's stay at the house a special experience. And reflecting on my afternoon at Robin House, it reminds me that making the most of short and precious lives is paramount, and that above all, it's important to each and every family, and equally to the staff members and to the volunteers of CHAS. Families are safe in the knowledge that they will be supported through what will be the darkest moments of their lives. And if I may, Deputy Presiding Officer, finish by quoting a parent, Lorna Cobbett, mum to Essie Victoria. Hospices are not hospitals, and for some families, they are a second home. They are there to support families and to make memories, to be a shoulder to cry on as you navigate an impossible path. We need to remove the fear and show how much they are places that are full of life. Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much. And I call Brian Whittle, to be followed by Jackie Bailey. Ms Bailey will be the last speaker in the open debate. Mr Whittle.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I would like to add my congratulations to my colleague Miles Briggs for bringing this debate to the Chamber and allowing us to talk warmly about the work that CHAS does. I've been aware of CHAS as an organisation for quite some time, probably on quite a superficial level. I was aware they used to run charity golf days, of which I used to get an invitation along. We play a celebrity golf day, we meet our friends, we have a bake and roll, we have a good chat with the lads. And part of that process is we'll maybe get a 2-3 minute presentation during that where somebody from CHAS would let us know what the charity does in that short space of time. And we would always say, what a fantastic charity that's great, we're happy to support that, and then off we'd go home. And it's only when you come into this role here that we get the opportunity to actually dig a little bit deeper into what these charities actually do. And I've had the pleasure of visiting Robin House, and it's only when you walk through that building you get a sense really of how important the services that they deliver are to the people that use those services. And it's unimaginable to those of us who are parents or even grandparents in my case, because that's how old I am. We get, it's an unimaginable situation that the parents and families are finding themselves in. That you walk through that room and you see you're imagining this as a real dark place in terms of feelings, but it's so bright. Everybody's talked about the hydro pool. Everybody's talked about the colours on the walls and the paintings and the play and the music. It's such a fantastic place to be at that time. And the garden, goodness me, how incredible that is. But I also want to take this opportunity, if I could, Deputy Presiding Officer. I know Mary Fee hosted recently in the garden lobby there an event for those who work with people who have lost children, people like SANS. And one of the ones I worked with is the butterfly release, which I've done a couple of times, which I find incredibly difficult to do. But nonetheless, I think it's very worthwhile when you're in a room with people who are celebrating the life of the children that they've lost and reading out something that they've written for you to read out in front of them. I find it incredibly difficult, but that idea of releasing a butterfly in the garden to try and to keep those memories alive, I think is incredibly moving, incredibly important. I know that the work done by the staff and volunteers at the hospices is both utterly vital and often hugely challenging. I think supporting someone as their health declines and they enter that last days of their life can take real toll. Never more so than when that kind of palliative care is needed by the young. All deaths are tragic, but perhaps none more so than the death of someone who hasn't had much time to experience life. I know Miles Briggs' motion talks about CHAS's mission to keep the joy alive, and from my own experiences of visiting Robin House, I've just seen how hard they work to bring joy to everyone who comes through their doors. And we talk about making people with life-shortening conditions comfortable in their final days. In most cases, that's about making someone physically comfortable, treating their symptoms and managing their pain. But sometimes we don't think enough about the mental comfort of people with life-shortening conditions and their families. And that's why CHAS's mission to keep the joy alive is so important. It's when we're going through something painful that moments of joy and fun are the most precious, and we can make the most difference. That sense of hope, that little reminder that even when things feel unendingly dark, there can still be some light. So if I could finish by once again thanking Miles Briggs for bringing this debate to the Chamber and allowing us to thank CHAS and other charities supporting those in such difficult communities. And I offer all the staff and volunteers working for CHAS our continued admiration and support, and look forward to visiting them again soon. Keeping the joy alive. What a very apt title for this debate, Deputy Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much, Mr Whittle. I call Jackie Bailey.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And let me start by congratulating Miles Briggs on securing this debate. I am very proud that Robin House is in my constituency, and I am always happy when colleagues come to visit my beautiful patch. The motto that CHAS has at the core of their mission, keeping the joy alive, perfectly sums up, in my view, the incredible work that they carry out day in and day out. The exceptional level of care and support that staff and volunteers at these hospices provide to the children and young people, and to family members too, really is second to none. I know from my visits to Robin House that families value the support that they receive at what can be an incredibly difficult time. Many of the children have quite severe life-limiting conditions, and you can only begin to imagine the impact that that would have on their families. But you would be mistaken, as many of the members have said this evening, if you think of Robin House as a sad place. It's actually quite the opposite. The minute you walk through the door, you hear peals of laughter. It's bright, it's positively bursting with energy and joy. And it's the staff and volunteers that create that culture, and it is wonderful to experience. Now, for 25 years now, CHAS have been supporting babies, children and young people with both end-of-life care, emotional and physical therapy, and education about life-shortening illnesses that they have. It hasn't always been easy. There have been funding problems in the past, but these are largely not quite behind you, but more settled and moving forward. You can always do with more money. But as Miles Briggs pointed out, there are currently 16,000 babies, children and young people in Scotland living with life-shortening conditions. So the facilities on offer to these children at Robin House, as well as Rachel House in Kinross, really do make all the difference for them and their families. Let me mention, as others have done, the specialist swimming pool at Robin House. It is a wonderfully sauna-like environment, very warm and cosy. It resounds to the splashes of children playing in a pool that is suited to their needs, with relaxing physiotherapy and absolutely stunning views across the countryside and the garden. The garden at Robin House is fantastic. I know Mary Fee has covered many of the services available at Robin House. I want to focus on the garden. The last time I was there, I was planting trees and bushes with Patrick Harvey, who's not in the chamber this afternoon. His mum Rose volunteers there, so he was press-ganged into going along. It was typically Scottish weather, presiding officer, a little bit damp, but we are hardy souls. But you know, it really didn't matter, because it's just such a fabulous, colourful space that children, and dare I say adults too, can roam free and have adventures, whether it's the pirate ship or getting lost in a jungle that is the garden. And when I think of it, I think of laughter, I think of fun, I think of serenity, but I also think of safety. And we just need to work, presiding officer, on the sunshine. But a big shout out to Maggie, who is responsible for the garden, and indeed for her army of volunteers that support her in her work. And indeed, our thanks to all the volunteers and to the staff and the trustees. I remember when CHAS decided to establish a hospice at Robin House. We had a little local difficulty with planning, but we overcame that obstacle. All I can think of, though, is the extent to which all of my constituents in Dumbarton, the Vale of Leven and Helensburgh went into fundraising overdrive. I have never been to so many bake sales, tombolas, donated so many bottles of Scottish Parliament whisky, or sponsored so many people in my life. But it was all truly in a great cause. And on that note, that fundraising continues. The Chief Executive of West Dumbartonshire Council, Joyce White, is about to trek across the Sahara for CHAS. I would encourage the Chamber to sponsor her. Less kind people are hoping she'll be there for a while, but I wouldn't dream of saying that. Whether it's the hospices in Balloch or Kinross or the home care service, CHAS's valued support and care reaches every corner of the country. For every child that CHAS cares for, they support a further 5 family members. So I cannot commend the work that they do highly enough, which truly does keep the joy alive.
Thank you very much, Ms Bailey. I now call on Joe Fitzpatrick to close to the Government. Minister, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Firstly, on behalf of the Scottish Government, I'd like to add my welcome to colleagues from CHAS and some of the families who are supported by CHAS to the Chamber this afternoon. I'd also like to add my thanks to Miles Briggs and congratulations to Miles Briggs for securing this debate in the Chamber this evening, and to colleagues across the Chamber for the thoughtful and considered contributions to the debate. CHAS fulfil a unique role in supporting children and young people with life-limiting conditions and also in supporting the families and friends around them. We've heard from colleagues across the Chamber about the difference that CHAS has made to some of their constituents, how CHAS has kept the joy alive for families when they felt at their lowest. Right at the start, Miles Briggs said he was trying to find a word, and my colleague Marie Todd, the Children's Minister, who hasn't been able to stay, has passed a note of her thoughts of what an appropriate word would be to describe Rachel and Robin House and indeed CHAS in general, and she sums it up just as joy. When she visited, she expected to find compassion, empathy and incredible expertise, which of course she did find, but she didn't expect to find the fun and spend her time playing and singing. And she sums up saying pure joy. And it has been really important to hear the kind of... I'm going to just remind us of some of the comments. So when Miles Briggs was talking, he talked about a sense of home and a haven. And Brian Whittle talked about the brightness. And Jackie Bailey, all members, I think, brought in that kind of language, that very positive, bright, joyous language, which I think is so important. But I think it's also important to remember what CHAS's purpose is, and I think Brian Whittle, for me, I think expressed just how moving and emotional all the stories we've heard, particularly those stories which CHAS, the case studies that CHAS have shared with all of us, and thanks so much to the individuals for allowing CHAS to share that, because it does give us all a fuller sense of just exactly how important the work that CHAS does is, the sheer breadth of support that CHAS provides in a compassionate way. These absolutely amazing staff and volunteers, and add my thanks to others in the chamber, to those volunteers, of course.
Monica Lennon.
Thank you, Minister. While you were speaking, I was reminded of conversations on my visit to Robin House, and one of the issues that stayed with me is the financial impact on families, particularly if they're a lower income family, and we know that health inequalities is a big issue in Scotland. So I just wonder, is there more that the government could do to work with CHAS to find out how we can get better at making sure we can maximise income for families in that situation, to make sure that they have access to all the advice and support that they need?
Minister.
We have a very good relationship with CHAS. CHAS is an organisation that we see ourselves working with as partners, and I think that's really good, a good way to continue working. And we, officials and CHAS are, I think, frequently getting around the table to make sure that we're doing everything we can to complement each other's roles and what we can add to this area. The type of skilled, compassionate care that we see being delivered by CHAS is more important now than ever. The children in Scotland's requiring a palliative care report, CHISP, notes the demand for such services is increasing, particularly in deprived areas, which I think comes to the point that Monica's saying, and as I think Monica Lennon, mentioned in her contribution, that data produced by CHAS is recognised as some of the best quality data in the world. So again, it's really important that we have that kind of data so we can have these conversations, and thanks again to CHAS for producing that. Scotland, I think, though, is already world-leading in the field of palliative and end-of-life care, and I'm proud of the progress that we've made over the past few years. We've increased numbers of specialist staff and are continuing to improve access to services, and through a programme of health and social care integration are putting services under the control of local communities. However, as CHAS has reflected in their briefing, there is always more that we can do. Our strategic framework for action on palliative and end-of-life care, which was published in December 2015, included a much-needed commitment to support and promote the further development of holistic palliative care for 0 to 25 age group. Since the publication of the framework, we've undertaken much more work to improve the care available for young people with palliative care needs and their families, and we remain committed to ensuring that everyone who needs palliative care can access it by the end of this Parliament. That's why we've given a particular focus to specialist children's palliative care services, 2017, we announced an investment in children's palliative care of £30 million over 5 years up to 2021. That investment was welcomed by CHAS and has been helpful in expanding children's palliative care services to help ensure that all families have access to high-quality palliative care and end-of-life care, regardless of where they live. Members will also be aware that earlier this year we launched the Paediatric End-of-Life Care National Managed Clinical Network, or Pelican. Hosted by NHS National Services Scotland, this network is designed to improve access to high-quality, person-centred and family-led end-of-life care for babies, children and young people with a life-limiting condition who are unstable, deteriorating or dying. CHAS has long supported the idea of this network and worked closely with Scottish Government officials and NHS NSS from the outset to shape the work to ensure it meets the needs of children and families across Scotland. Thanks in no small part to the work of CHAS, the network is now in place and recruitment has commenced on key clinical positions. I look forward to seeing how that work progresses over the coming months. Although the Pelican network will be helpful in linking clinical services and sharing learning across the country, we still need services to work in partnership with each other to provide high-quality care and support. However, to achieve this vision, it's essential that we create the right conditions nationally to support local communities in their planning and delivery of services to help ensure that the particular needs of local communities are best met. This ethos is at the heart of health and social care integration. Integration authorities are working with local communities and building on the expertise of organisations like CHAS to plan and commission services that are designed to meet the needs of their local communities. By commissioning services in this way, service improvements will be driven through meaningful collaborative partnerships with the wider palliative and end-of-care community. And Annabel Ewing, I think, mentioned just how important those partnerships are to success. By commissioning services, CHAS is already engaging with integration authorities and working in partnership with health and social care and voluntary sectors to make the most of every opportunity to improve the delivery of and access to children's palliative care across Scotland. In short, CHAS work is a great example of the principle of health and social care integration in practice. In closing, Presiding Officer, I'm grateful to CHAS for their invaluable work, and I'm optimistic that through our combined efforts and continued partnership working will bring about further improvements in children's palliative and end-of-life care. CHAS aims to ensure that every baby, child and young person who needs palliative care, wherever they are, can access it where and when they need it. And I'm sure that's an aim that we all share, and I look forward to working with CHAS and others around the Chamber for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the debate, and I close this meeting of Parliament.